Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest LinkedIn Live. It's a beautiful day here in New Jersey as we prepare for tomorrow with our paper bag ban. Um, I wanted to welcome Paul Cecala, and it's laced in Badham. Have I got the?
Yeah, you
And
did.
we're going to be talking today specifically about the idea of young professionals getting into the workforce, how parents can best support the journey. I'm coming from probably a similar place than Paul as Paul is because my younger son is now just graduating college, and we have the whole helicopter mom thing going on with us. And Layston, you're out of college a short time, so you can definitely speak to that. So why don't you, Paul and Layston, just introduce yourselves to everyone else who's here as a start?
Sure. My name's Paul Cecala. I am a certified global career development facilitator with about 20 plus years as a career coach. And I consider myself the project planning career coach. So the concept there is if you are stuck and your job search is going nowhere, if you talk to me, we'll figure out exactly where it's wrong and what steps we need to take to get you moving forward and get you employed as quick as possible. I've worked with a lot of people recently out of graduate or out of college or high school, as well as a lot of mid-career and C-level folks. So I've got good experience with the people that we're talking about and to today.
Great. And Layston?
I'm Layston. I'm the operations manager for a small corporate innovation workshop firm. But more importantly, I am a co-facilitator for a young job seekers club. We call it YoJo. And I had the experience of coming back to the US during COVID, being unemployed, and having to navigate the, you know, the job, the job economy and having to land a job with COVID right after graduation. And there are a lot of struggles that young people face that are pretty unique to our generation. So it's
And
definitely a passion.
Layston and I are the co-facilitators of the
Yes.
YoJo Club,
Yes.
which I founded, and she is one of our greatest advocates, best graduates of the club, and most successful young people that I know. She's got multiple income streams. She's got a full-time job plus a side business, and is really an amazing young woman. And I'm so glad to consider her a friend and a coworker and
Definitely.
colleague.
So I want to do a few shout outs to people that are here. Terry Seaman is here from New Jersey, our
Hey,
friend.
Terry.
Uh, Don Nosner. I have Deanna Kritz coming in from Chicago, and Christine Dykman as well. One of the things that I think we wanted to talk about today was the parents' role in this whole job search. My younger son is just graduating college, and as of yesterday, he actually got an offer, which is exciting. But
Congratulations.
it was very challenging to navigate this as a parent as to what you should and shouldn't do. There's such a temptation to say, show me your resume. This is what I think you should do, et cetera. So, and I know, Paul, you do a lot of, coaching. I have certain suggestions along those lines.
Right. A quick story I want to share. My husband is a manager for UPS, and he had a 20-year-old intern that he was working with one summer. And this young man could not put his phone away and stay off of his phone for even 10 or 15 minutes during the business day. So they're in a meeting, the two of them, with three levels of management above my husband, all in this meeting, about 20 people. And this young guy is just constantly on his phone, trying to be surreptitious, doing it down in his lap. And Dan tried multiple times to stop him, and it just didn't work. After the meeting, Dan kind of put the young man in his place and said, look, I've warned you several times prior to this meeting. Now here you are with my boss's boss's boss, and you're doing it, and it was noticed. The next time you take your phone out during the business day, one of two things are going to happen. I'm either going to take your phone until the end of the day, or you're not going to have a job to come back to the next day. So make a decision. How do you want to proceed? Well, the day after that, this young man's mother calls my husband and says, "How dare you talk to my son that way? You have no right to take his phone," and goes on and on and on and on. And the response was, "Ma'am, I don't know who you are. You say you're this person's mother, but I don't know that. You're a voice on the phone. So I can't even acknowledge that this person works for me because that would be a breach of confidentiality. Besides that, if this person did work for me, the fact that you are calling on his behalf, where he at 20 years old is a young adult who should be able to take care of himself and manage his own life, if he can't do that, then he's not the kind of employee I want. And if you truly are his mother, I will be asking him not to return tomorrow. So I suggest we get off the phone before something more happens that neither you nor your son want. Thank you and have a good day." And I think that's a typical response that a lot of employers would make. Certainly it's the kind of response that schools are making at this point. Right? So what can we as parents do to empower our young adults to make the right decisions, to do the right things, but to be encouraging and supportive of them without being critical or criticizing them or critical of their employer? And I've got some thoughts on that, but Layston, I'd be curious, what would
Yeah,
you like to hear from,
exactly.
how would you want your parents to respond?
Certainly, that was very interesting and definitely a breach. I cringe thinking about my parent calling about that. But really providing resources rather than trying to be the resource, I think is really
Mhm.
helpful. When I was really, uh, job searching, but also feeling very prideful, it helped when my mom offered certain job search groups as a resource, as a
Sure,
stepping stone. And while offered that she could look at my resume, that she also knew that she maybe wasn't like most qualified to do that. But just having the offer, but providing the resources and the places to go on my own time when I was ready, was definitely the best way of, kind of supporting me during that time, because it's a very emotional, a very emotional time and you're just trying to figure out what's, the right next step.
and you bring up a couple of really key points, I think, from a career coaching perspective, from a psychotherapeutic perspective, though that's not my specialty, um, and just from the perspective of I want to be the right best parent that I can be. And I have a 17-year-old autistic young man who is my son. And we're often running into the similar kinds of things I think that Ken you run into with your kids. You know, the best that we can do, and here I am a career coach, my son doesn't want to know from me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm the parent, right? So the best thing that I can do is ask a lot of questions, do it without judgment, and offer a lot of resources and opportunities, and maybe make some connections. And exactly that's what Layston's mom actually did. Her mom and I are good friends. That's how I met Layston. And so from that recommendation to connect, we have developed a really great
Mhm.
relationship. And what I find is that a lot of the young adults that I deal with are like sponges. When it's the right person delivering the message, they're ready to accept it and soak it up and do it all. But it has to be that right person giving the message. And you and I, as the parent, Ken, are not the right person.
No, well,
Right?
the analogy I'll almost make is when we were doing the college application process. Very stressful time. There are
Yep.
deadlines, there are colleges, there are things that are required. And if you go ahead and do it for them, as opposed to them finding out, um, it doesn't help. And when they get rejected, that's the first time they're probably really rejected and it's like no one wants me, and it's a little bit hard that first time, but it's almost better to find out in that way, because in my case, my son was like, he took the rejection and said, I'm going to show the college that rejected me what I can do, and
Good for him.
he put it behind him. He's like, he doesn't want to talk about the college. He was disappointed and moved on. It's like their loss. So, but that he figured that out without us. I mean, we were trying to be supportive and I'm sorry and all that, but that has to come from inside.
And you are also again pointing out another really important thing, right? We have to trust in ourselves. We have to trust that we as the parents have done the right best thing by our kids in the way we raise them, in the way that we've encouraged them, in the way that we've taught them ethics and morals and to some extent professionalism, and that they are going to do the right thing. They may make a mistake. They may need us to nudge them in the right direction. But if we drop the hammer on their head, everyone's going to lose. So let's just always build people up, always praise the things that they're doing right.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent, ignore the things that they're doing wrong or that are going wrong, and then help them to find the corrections for themselves. Right. And is that how you would see it, Layston? Right. I need to find the path myself. I don't need someone to tell me what to do, especially not mom or dad.
I would say so. Definitely important to, to land something. And I think that helps with, just the confidence. Really,
Yeah.
it's but also encouraging that job searching shouldn't be something you just do alone. I think that's kind of a balance,
And
is
that's what
trying
Jude
to,
says here. Provide support and guidance and make sure they know you're there for them. They have to learn to succeed and fail on their own. And I guess another analogy, which I talk about, and I know you do, is I don't want to say kids, young adults, and like going into job search are probably just as discriminated as people of our age, but in a different way.
Yes.
Go in there and they just want 3 to 5 experience, which you don't have, someone getting it out. And again, it's just dealing with the navigation of job search in general.
I find there's a catch-22 where, all of these intro jobs will ask for 3 to 5 years of experience. A lot of them do. And and I wrote this in an article for the professional support group of Central New Jersey, where one of the issues is that companies want certainty, and a young, fresh out of school is not certainty, especially during or kind of post COVID. And so that's why they want this like 3 to 5 years of experience for an entry level position. But most people don't have that. And the fact that if you had internships, like I did, I had internships and I had jobs during college, and even that wasn't considered the 3 to 5 years of experience, because it was always seen as like short term. It wasn't seen as like real job experience. But it's, there's a little bit of an impossible standard there. But it's a balance between finding the right employers or finding the right companies that do see more potential versus exact, like trying to match every single qualification.
So I'd love to get some other feedback from other people. This is us. The more we support them without reservation, the more they have a platform to believe in themselves. From there, they can self-advocate. I think one of the challenges, and I'd love to get sense from people in the audience, is that when they start applying for a job, there's a process to it, and the best type of support is to be there with the ups and downs, because you're going to get more rejections than you're going to get successes, and sometimes it may be just not knowing how to handle something. And again, what I've been working with my son on is the correct way to communicate back by emails, only because he hasn't done it that much before, but he's showing me what he's done. I'm not writing it for him, and we just brainstorm that way.
So one of the things that is really great about the Yojo Club is that it is other recent graduates who are going through the same situation as you that are helping each other with their job search, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you get that question of, all right, so I'm at this point, I need to send an email. What do I say? Oh my God, I don't want to screw it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now the other members of the club, and we call it a club, but the truth is, anyone can attend as long as you're under 30. That's actually the
Mm-hmm.
only requirement. You have to be under 30. And so the others in the group will say, well, here's what I did when I was in that scenario, or here's what a friend of mine suggested that I do, or my mom's best friend said to do this, right? And so they're getting ideas, brainstorming from the other members of the group, that now the right guidance and advice comes out naturally, but it's not from you or I, Ken, us old farts that don't know what we're talking about. It's from their peers that may not know individually, but collectively they have all the right stuff to make the right decisions and to do the right things, and in this case, to give the right advice. Isn't that how you experience the club, Layston?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I have learned a lot of jobs seeking advice from all different resources, but I would say it's the collective advice that we get that's really useful.
I also think there's a limit to what the schools can actually teach about some things, whether they don't have the experience or the knowledge of what's going on there. And I think the more that we, as people of a certain age pool, that we can kind of educate them, that also helps as well, because they only know what they know. And I know I do the thing of William Passon where I mentor the college students, because they only know what they're taught, and it's a very safe environment. I'm working with someone now, and the way they showed him how to do a resume is shocking. I'll put it that way.
Well, and it's most likely old school.
It is
It's
totally old school.
Yeah, and so I I agree it can be shocking. I like to say that I'm disappointed that
Mm-hmm.
the career services staff have not kept up, at many schools have
Right.
not kept up with the current terms and the current processes. But it's tough for them to do that. They really do have a big job, and they're most responsible for managing the statistics more than anything else.
Of course.
So anything they can do that is hands-on is a bonus. But what what can we all do to support those schools, to support those departments, and most importantly, to support those graduates? So, for example, I am, much like you, a part of my college's alumni
Mm-hmm.
association and volunteer to do mock interviews and to reach out to recent grads and help them. In fact, last 2 weeks ago, I did a presentation to recent grads on the job search process. And in 2 more weeks, we're going to be doing a conversation similar to this one through the Alumni Association for the recent grads. So uh, it's important that we support them in as many different ways as we can. But again, for me, it's all about the judgment piece, right? Are we approaching these people from a position of mutual respect and admiration, from a
Mm-hmm.
position of judgment free guidance and offering suggestions that
Mm-hmm.
they ask for? Giving your guidance and advice when it's not asked for, who the hell cares? Right? But if it's being asked for, then offer it. You can even ask, do you want my ideas? I'd be happy
Mm-hmm.
to share some with you. But if they say no, move on, because they're not going to listen to anything you say.
So some employers we work with in career services have an expectation as to what they want to see on a resume. And I would ask you, Layston, when you were in school, um, did you find, and thinking back to your talking to your younger self a few years ago, are there things you wish you had learned more in school, or things that would have been more helpful, or do you recognize the limits, let's say, of the places you went to school?
I was very lucky to go to George Washington
Hmm.
University, and I was in their School of Business. So they really did have some good services, but really to the business school,
Hmm.
um, where it was about, here's the, a proper resume template that was pretty close to what would be accepted by an ATS. It so the services were good. The the real problem was when I needed to go and, ask for some of that help, especially when, like, in terms of job searching, like, what is the advice that I can get? And really, they looked at me saying, uh,
Go to the
go
website.
go to the website, go to LinkedIn, go apply online and network. But then there's no there's no explanation beyond networking is transactional,
Hmm.
and they teach you how to give an elevator pitch but not how to connect with someone. And it's
Or build
frustrating.
relationship,
Yeah, or
right?
build
Right.
that.
And
Networking is building relationships, and that's I think what was the key missing piece, was that I remember going to a career fair and going up, being so nervous, and I just delivered my elevator pitch and, like, looked like I was lecturing the person. And no wonder why there was a blank stare at the end of my elevator pitch. But we weren't taught, like, how to work it in, or how to approach, and
and
there's something to it.
and some of that, Layston, is trial and error, right?
Yes.
Yes, a good career coach would give you better guidance and more information on how to have that conversation and how to build the relationship, starting with your introduction and then moving it on from there. But some of it, you just have to experience it and make those mistakes, and then come back and ask us and say, okay, this is what happened. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to do if you are a young person. Feel free to come back to those of us who have some more experience and say, this is what happened. How do I fix it now? And we'll be happy to help you with that and give you some ideas, not only to repair what you may have done inappropriately or incorrectly, but also how to not do that in the future. I also want to go back to Nancy's comment for a moment, Ken,
Hmm.
because,
Sure.
you know, you're right, Nancy, that employers have very specific wants and needs in their resume. But one of the things I think that the career services representatives and managers that I've worked with and spoken to at about 15 different schools recently, um, there's still many of them trying to do more of a cookie cutter kind of approach. The the companies that you specifically are talking to may have some very specific needs, or the
Hmm.
industry that you're working with may have some very specific needs, but that's not necessarily the case across the board, right? So one of the things that I advocate and really push hard on with the folks in the Yojo Club and some of the other young people I work with is, just like those of us who are in our 40s, 50s, and 60s career searching, we have to all do the research up front
Hmm.
to learn about the organization, to learn about the specific hiring manager. Because even within one company, every hiring manager may have a slightly different expectation or take on what the right resume is. And so it's incumbent on us as the job seeker to try and understand what those differences are and write our resume to that person, which goes back to, how can we help Layston not to make those same mistakes when she's approaching someone in a networking space, so that she can then build that relationship and learn from that person what that individual wants in their resume. Right,
So,
so it all
Christy,
comes back to networking.
well,
Sorry.
this is the thing. If you're an introvert as a student, you might not even go to career services. So what happens to all those students? I would love to see required courses that you speak about, Layston, required before you graduate. Now you have these classes on finance, I'm sure that are there, maybe classes in other ways. I mean, when I went to school, we would have to take a freshman composition class, which was like English, just to make sure you can do it. So maybe there has to be some general class, whether it's job search or curriculum or online, because people only know what they know, and what they do with the information is something else. But that's a very valid point.
It's funny, Ken, that you put it that way, and Christine, you're right on target. I have been working with alumni associations since I graduated in 1985. Okay, I'm a little old, and just like the high schools are complaining that there's too much required curricula to add something like this to the curriculum, even though everyone sees the value to it, there's a lot of truth to that in college as well. It would be really great if we could do more to incorporate that into the university or college experience. And some trade schools are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of colleges that I'm aware of that do have a course that does a lot of this. But many of them are doing it at the beginning of their training program, which is appropriate because you want the young people to start their career search, their networking process early on, and they need to be able to do that as a part of getting their internships. But as we've seen just in the last 4 years, the whole process has changed dramatically. As much as it's the same, a lot of it has changed very dramatically in the last 4 years, especially when you talk specifically to resume writing. So it's hard for the instructors to keep up with all that's new and current in what's happening within the job market.
Definitely.
Right? So how can a young person do that? Right? How can they keep up? And this is where I would encourage all of you who are seeking your first job, find some mentors. Find people both in your company, if you're currently employed, and people outside your company whom you can develop a trusting, strong relationship with that are more knowledgeable about the ways of employment, about professionalism, about job search, and build the relationship with them so that as you're going through your career and you come upon issues or questions, you've got someone that you can turn to that can help you. And I'll give you an example of why for a mentor within the company can be really, really powerful. Your boss is going to always be judging you based on the work that you perform for that boss. They're not necessarily able to look out for your career. They want to. They're going to try to, but they can't always do it, right? So if you can identify another manager in another department that you have some type of a relationship with, something in common with, maybe you're both skiers or swimmers or whatever it may be, and you can build a friendship with that person. Then when you have issues, you can go and ask, hey, this is the situation I'm coming up against. How should I handle that? What would you suggest? Right? Or if you need someone to be your advocate with higher management, that person will know you and know your work well enough to be able to say, yeah, I know their boss sees this, but let me tell you as an independent outsider how I see them, what I see them doing. And now they can be your advocate to help you with that next promotion or to potentially keep you employed if that's what's necessary.
So Lynn put up here, without getting a grade, career services may not be a priority for them, but it should be a required course.
Yes, it should, Lynn.
Rutgers Business School has a required course about job search, resume, and LinkedIn. And now we have Scott. Will never happen because of the background most educators and administrators have, but get rid of the liberal arts and replace with needed life business skills. You're not going to get an argument, I don't think, for many of us.
I would actually say
Okay.
certain liberal arts is needed because writing is one of the best skills
Hmm.
you can
Okay.
ever bring forward. So that's my caveat with
Sure.
that and storytelling.
Hmm.
Yes.
Storytelling is such an undervalued skill, and it is so imperative in any marketing classes that you have. It's so important in job searching, marketing yourself, and to have I have a very diverse, very varied background, and to be able to explain to an employer, like, why was I studying abroad in these completely different places? Why was I studying, anti-corruption here? And then why was
Hmm.
I, studying like international finance like there? But then to be able to really, bring it through the fact that I'm in marketing and operations now, like to be able to then be able to explain and story tell that
Hmm.
to someone, that and writing, I would say, are essential
Right.
skills, and are but I think it's more about having a holistic, you know, uh, education,
I think the
and not
mindset of,
just the little things.
I think the mindset of a lot of colleges is that they're going to say this employer is coming to campus. So now you
Yes.
want to go, now you're going to go and meet with the employer. And that's kind of the job fair type thing. And that's, I think, to some extent what every place does because they've done it before. Doesn't make it better, but that's what they're used to. So again, and I would almost say that when your parents, when you're looking for colleges for your kids, ask them about their career services departments. Ask them what they do, because that's just as important about the grades and the schools. What are they going to do later on? What is their program like? Because school ends at some point, but your career is there forever.
Well, and a career is only for 10 years actually, and then you're going to have
Okay.
a new career, and
Right,
then 10
right.
years later you're going to have a new career, right? But yes, your work life is the majority of the rest of your life, and so we need to be prepared for how do we proceed and continue down that road. Um, you know, some of the other pitfalls that I see with new graduates. Um, Showing up for the first day of work in completely the wrong attire, um, not knowing and understanding whether it's work from home on Zoom or in the office, what is proper etiquette and what is the difference in the etiquette between work from home versus in the office.
Hmm.
And so these are other places where, as adults who have been in the workforce, we can be that mentor for the young person. But additionally, don't be afraid if you're starting your first job. Once you have the offer and you're signed on the dotted line and you're going to be going to work, don't be afraid to call and ask. Tell me, what is the proper dress attire for being in this office? And what do people do for lunch every day? Do I need to bring my lunch, or what are the opportunities and options available to me? Right? You know, how should I address my coworkers? Should they be Mr. and Miss, or is it first name basis? These are all questions that you can and should ask prior to arriving that first day of work. I would also ask specifically, what will my first 2 or 3 days look like? Walk me through everything that's going to happen in that first couple of days on the job so I know what to expect. And especially, Christine, for introverts, asking those questions can really help to put you at ease because you'll be better prepared for when you walk through the door that first time. Um, Ask, what time do I need to be here? The workday may start at 9, but I maybe want to show up at 8:45 because I want to be at my desk and ready to start at 9 o'clock. Or it may be the kind of place where if you show up at even 5 minutes to 9, you're way too early and people are going to look at you funny. Well, you want to know this before that
Right.
first day, right? And so these are the kinds of things you want to think about as you're approaching that first day of employment.
Definitely. So what has been your experience, Laced, in the workforce when you work with all, because now we're multi-generational in the workforce. So, and it's a little different than when you're in college and everyone's, except for the professors, everyone's pretty much the same age. Then you go into a workplace situation and it's all different generations. Is that a challenge or something that you have to at your age, have to deal with or understand?
I have the benefit of being an only child, so
Okay.
dealing with multiple generations has always been something I grew up with. But
Okay.
I will say having the job search groups where I was decades younger than most everyone who was on there, or at least like, half most of
Listen,
them
you're
are.
making me feel good. Thanks.
But it was really, I think, a good way for me to be kind of introduced into like learning certain etiquette from people who had been in their careers for a very long time, and to know kind of going into that learning from the job search group, and
Hmm.
then to be able to apply it to the different job the different volunteer experiences that I did while I was job searching, or to, you know, even working a part time job where, I brought that professionalism as a supervisor. And then into the job that I have now, it there were definitely steps along the way that while the business school taught that professionalism, so did a lot of these groups going into it. Now, I would say there's definitely um, there's definitely a mix of technology use. I would say even with the phone, I know I need to like put down the phone while I'm like helping run a workshop, even if my phone is necessary for what I'm doing. I have
Hmm.
to be aware of older generations are going to look at me and think I'm just, you know, going on Instagram when really I'm actually note taking. But I
Hmm.
still have to be aware of that and,
Hmm.
be aware of how the client might perceive me because of my age. Um, and so I think technology has been maybe like um, one of the biggest differences. But otherwise, I felt pretty prepared in terms of professionalism
Hmm.
going in, but because of all those different resources going leading up to it.
So, Scott, internships help students acclimate, but be aware it might be different in different places, and that's very
Yes.
true. There's a big difference between New York City and New Jersey, where we are even, and geographically, it's not that far, and that's why it's so important to ask the questions.
I would say even a
Well,
startup is very different than corporate.
right.
Absolutely.
Or one industry to another can be very, very different as well. Again, going back to how do I address people, right? When I was working at universities, if we were in a open forum like this or a public scenario, then the professors and the staff, the administration, were all referred to as doctor, right, or Mr. or Mrs. if they had their masters. But when we were in the office together, I could still talk to Ken and Layston, even if they were doctor. And, Lynn Williams, no matter what, when she gets her doctorate, when we're in public, it'll be Dr. Williams. But when we're in private, it's going to be my best pal, Lynn. And,
Hmm.
and that's okay, right? But that's also one of those kinds of things that we need to learn when we're going into new employment. And so asking the questions helps you to navigate those issues before they become a problem.
I know one of the questions I always ask when I was working, I would ask my boss, "How do you want to stay in touch? Are you okay with a quick stop in the morning at the desk? Do you want an email, a text?" because I want to be respectful of your time, because I have to know what works there. You know, I don't want to over talk, over communicate, if you will.
Right.
That's what I'm used to, and that's where it goes to asking the questions.
And sometimes, for example, Layston can say to the group that she's working with, you know, I have my phone out because I'm expecting that some of the other people coming later on are going to need to contact me. So I apologize, but note that this is going to be related to our program. That's why I'm using it. Or, you know, I've got my tablet on the table and I'm typing because I'm taking notes of what we're talking about. I'm not just surfing the net. And it's okay to do those things and say those things, maybe even ask permission for those things, depending on the group you're talking to, so that people understand what's going on. It's all about knowledge and information.
Definitely.
There's definitely a difference in communicating.
Yes.
Yes.
Some people love emails. I hate email, but I do it. I do it because I have to.
Well, but
But
even
there are
then,
other
with
ways.
an email, you have to think about the subject line. And how many times do you go through an email 5, 6, 7, and you forget what the whole topic's about? I mean, you know, sometimes it's easy to pick up the phone, send a quick text or something. But again, it's all about what the company policy is or the place you're working at.
Well, and I, you know, many of you know I do a whole presentation on listening skills. And why do I do that presentation? Because not only has listening become a lost art, but we've come we've become so used to electronic communication and written communication that we've lost all of the emotion that goes into communicating when we do it only by type or writing. And I encourage everyone, but I would suggest this especially of young folks. Shy away from texting and emailing when you're in the job. Start with a voice communication, preferably face to face. If not, then by phone. And then follow up with the email or the text that recaps and documents what was said in the conversation. Because then there's less chance of information being misunderstood in the translation. You know, I had a manager who, for whatever reason, whenever I received an email from him, I immediately thought he was yelling at me. There was just something about his writing style combined with my experiences of him that I always thought he was yelling at me. Well, the truth is, 7 or 8 out of 10 times, he was just simply conveying information or asking a question with absolutely no judgment involved. But my prejudices of thinking he was yelling at me then colored the way I responded, which oftentimes came across very negative. And ultimately, it was the downfall for me in that position. Whereas, had I remembered, and this is an important point, I think, for young people, it's not about you, it's about business. It's about getting the task completed and doing what's right for the profitability of the company. It's not about you. So we have to learn, and this is a hard lesson for me to learn, I have to admit. We have to learn to take our emotions out of the equation and look at it from a very stoic, very non-emotional perspective, and then say, okay, now what do I think of this message and how would I respond? You're smiling, Layston. Tell me more
Yeah.
about the smile.
No, it definitely having to take the emotion out of it is really important, and something I still have to recognize. Where I'll read a very quick email, just like a 1 or 2 word response or okay, and you just read way too much into a simple word like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to really just recognize, business speak, business, like the business world in that way, to recognize like you do have to take the emotion out of it, because otherwise, if you're going to read into every little thing, it's just going to be painful.
Well, think about it
Yeah.
from the standpoint, a lot of times you get a quick email back, yes, okay, whatever, because they're doing 5 or 6 or 7 other things at the same time.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily realize that. So I've taken it personally too. And
Yeah.
it's just that you're multitasking. So you're really
And even with the job search, when you're reaching out to someone and not getting a response, it's not a rejection of them not wanting to talk to you. It's that they probably honestly have so much going on like that, yeah, okay, they forgot you, but they're also forgetting other, 20 other things. So it's to be able to be willing to reach out again to follow up is, I think, one of the skills that I've had to learn through job searching and networking, but also really having to practice, and continue to practice now, is that follow up and follow through, and
Mhm.
to be consistent and communicative through that.
So I want to thank you both for joining today. Would you be up for doing this again in the future? Because I see a lot of great comments.
Sure.
Sure.
Yes. So
Maybe
any
with
final
another
thoughts that
friend.
you and Paul, any final thoughts you and Layston want to share before we end?
I think if I were to ask you to take one thing from this conversation, it would be, as a new graduate, you don't know it all, even though you may think you do. So please ask for help. Ask people around you for their perspective. And don't think that by doing so, you're any less. In most cases, you're probably going to be far more, and certainly far more successful, if you do check in with someone else before you just respond.
Great. How about you, Layston?
If I have to distill it to one thing, is that there are so many resources out there, and all provide, different different experience, but it's really through just continuing to network, to build those relationships, to build those mentorships, to be able to learn through that practice is really what's most important.
And Ken, if anyone is interested in learning more about the Yojo Club, I would love for them to check it out. You can find it on Meetup, as well as just reach out directly to me. Or it actually is on Ken's My Networking Central. So you can go there.
And I would definitely follow up in the chat a lot. I think this was a great session. Appreciate it very much. I'm not going to be around next week, everyone. I'm actually going to graduation, my son's graduation. Yay, yay, yay. So I'll see everyone on May 17th. Have a great day, and talk soon.
Sounds
Thanks.
great.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.